Was about 7 or 8 years old and went with my family to this man-made lake, family park place in South Georgia. Basically a big dugout pond that the owner put a bunch of beach sand and palm trees around and charged admission for people to come, park their cars, grill and swim for the day. Also had a big unsafe as hell water slide that kids got hurt on. So where my family would park was in front of this little island that was a clump of sand about 30 yards off the shoreline. I was not the best swimmer, but the depth was just above my head, so I could bob up and down and bounce out to this island. Bouncing out to that little island one day we were there, my foot came down onto what felt like a face, felt what was a nose on my toe. The thing I remember is the feeling of hair flowing between my toes, that feeling of fine hair waving in water. I freaked out and for the longest time just sat on the shore. Was a little kid and did not think of anything about it. I can still remember the worried parents going around yelling this kid's name, asking if anyone had seen this little boy. They found him under the water right in front of that island. I'm 47 now and can still remember the feeling of that hair between my toes. The case of septic tank Sam. In 1975, an Alberta couple wanted a pump for their septic tank, and they decided to take the pump from the tank in their old abandoned farm instead of buying a new one. In doing so, they discovered a body that had been hidden there. The victim's story is very grim. He had been severely mistreated before he was shot, then placed in the septic tank of an abandoned farm in hopes the incident would never be discovered. The victim was identified in 2021, but the case is yet to be solved. Edit. It was in 1977. Middle-aged woman in North Carolina was haunted by a fleeting memory of seeing her father's face in the farm privy when she was a child. Her father had abandoned the family when she was like 5, and her therapist recommended hypnotic regression as a way to work this out. A few other memories floated up, including coming into the kitchen and seeing her mother mopping up blood, who yelled at her to go back to bed. Her mom still lived on the family farm, and after a few more details turned up, the local sheriff got a warrant to dig where the old privy had stood. Yep, Dad was still in there, cut up presumably to fit down the hole. This was pre-internet, but developed in real time in the local paper, and right about when the DA was deciding whether to go forward with the case. The 70-something-year-old mom drove out to the North 40 with a pistol. This is all from memory. Love to know if I'm remembering this correctly. This girl I knew wasn't answering her phone when I was calling or texting. Finally, she does, and is said she's locked in some guy's dorm room in UMBC. I get on the phone with the guy and we start arguing. I say I'm on my 2 deal with it, and when I get to campus, she tells me she got out, and I pick her up. I want to confront him, and she says no, that he seems really creepy. So fast forward a couple days later, and this guy finds my AOL Messenger, yes, AIM, and is threatening me and showing me he knows my whole legal name and address. But also, this was 2005, so stuff like that wasn't as easy to find on the internet. He threatens to kill me and the girl, and I called his bluff and let him know I'd be ready to meet up with him anytime because I figured he was a keyboard warrior. A few weeks later, he went on a date with someone from MySpace and brutally killed and raped her. He mutilated her body so it would be hard to identify her. He ended up pleading guilty to spare himself the death penalty. John Gomer is his name, and they called him the MySpace Killer. I don't remember the name of the lake, but it was slowly filling up with CO2 over decades, and one day an earthquake happened, shifting the water just enough to undissolve all the CO2, and it slowly crept down the mountain into the village, creating a wave of invisible, undetectable death. Everyone in the village, animals, humans, birds, died where they stood without even knowing why. Lake Nyos in Cameroon, and it was a volcanic eruption that set off the disaster. They have since installed a degassing system for the lake. However, scientists discovered that another lake, Lake Kivu, in the Democratic Republic of Congo, is also supersaturated with CO2 and naturally degasses every 1,000 years or so. Lake Kivu is 2,000 the size of Lake Nyos. My grandparents are Dutch immigrants in New Zealand, and in the 1970s, they had a caravan that they took out camping to a rural part of the North Island for a little family fun camping trip. My mom and siblings would have been 10 or younger at the time. They were way out in the middle of nowhere, near a lake in the rainforest. And after the kids had gone to sleep, my grandparents had stayed awake a little while, just reading, etc., having a cup of tea. They started hearing strange noises like footsteps outside and twigs breaking. Maybe a hushed voice, but thought they were going paranoid. They were getting a bit freaked out at this point, but assumed it was nothing and they'd be safe. Grandpa told me he couldn't go to sleep and suddenly heard a definite footstep right outside the caravan door. He peeked out the window of the caravan, and it was completely pitch black and no moonlight whatsoever. But he could see the glowing cigarette of what must have been a pretty tall man, standing right at the door of the caravan. He could still hear other footsteps too, even though whoever was smoking this cigarette outside the door was standing dead still. He told me he'd never been so scared in his life, but he had to do something because he had his wife and 4 little kids sleeping inside the caravan, and so he grabbed his butcher's knife. He was a butcher by profession. Lord knows why he had it on a family camping trip. Opened the door to confront or yell or do whatever he could to scare the people away. But when he opened the door, he saw no one and heard no noise. He thought he was going crazy, but he saw the cigarette butt on the ground outside the door, freshly finished. He got into the car straight away. He had everything ready to go, luckily because he'd already planned on beginning driving early the next morning anyways, and drove everyone away and found somewhere else near a town to stay instead. In my own personal life, my childhood best friend's alcoholic grandpa killed and dismembered his also alcoholic girlfriend. She was missing for around a year, but her family was used to her disappearing like that due to her addictions, so nobody reported her missing. Well, Grandpa died, and my childhood friend was supposed to get his car. That was parked about a block away from his house, but her aunt claimed it instead, and my friend was pissed and decided to call and get the car towed, being petty. So her aunt wouldn't be able to get the car out without going through a lengthy process since the car was in the grandpa's name still. One of the dudes working at the tow company was friends with the aunt and knew her dad had died. It was his car. So he called her to give her a chance to get the car first. She went to pick it up and noticed 2 or 3 totes in the back seat. And for whatever reason, she started opening them up right there and saw they were full of different sized vacuum-sealed bags. She couldn't tell what was in the bags, BC. They were made with that material that gives like a frosted look, and could only tell that whatever was in them was all a dark color. She decided to open one of the bags and was immediately hit with an extremely foul odor, and at first she thought it was deer meat or something that had gone bad, but when she finally actually looked inside the bag, it was a human hand. She ended up calling the cops, and they took all the totes away in the car, so the aunt, or my friend, didn't even end up with it, and nothing was ever said or done because the dude was dead. The same childhood friend of mine ended up being involved with a murder herself some years later. She had gotten addicted to meth, and one night was with 2 other addicts who were a couple. My friend was driving, girlfriend was in passenger, and the boyfriend in the back. They decided they needed to rob somebody so they could get high. And when they pulled up, the dude hopped in the back seat, and pretty much immediately, the boyfriend tried to rob him, but the dude pulled out a gun and shot the guy in the head, then ran. My friend and the girlfriend then drove to the hospital, and instead of getting help, they just pushed him out of the car and fled. It took the cops a few months to figure out who both the women were, but they eventually found out and both were sentenced to prison. My friend did like 5 to 7 years and has been out for a few years now. That's all for now, dear friends. Share your scary stories with us. And don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel if you enjoyed the video. It means a lot to me. Thank you all for watching. Good luck to everyone. Bye, everyone.